state laws protect you. For more information about your rights at work and how to exercise them, visit dir.ca.gov/COVID. Your health and safety is important. So remember, wear a mask, wash your hands, and keep 6 feet apart. For more information about your rights at work, visit dir.ca.gov/COVID.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful April the 19th, 2021. Grande Deportes. Bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, just an absolute gorgeous day down here in the south, and over the weekend also got a chance to hang out with Shaq as he was shooting another one of those those icy hot commercials and everything. But It's just nice down here for a perfect spring day. Once again, I want to thank those frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, first responders. They love days like this.
They love days like this. It's always good when you got some icy hot, Big C, but I need some icy cold. It's too hot in California. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Never stop arriving. Also, all around the world, say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And we really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. It's good to have a smart TV. You'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C, mostly pausing because it's so hot in California. It's so hot you can actually fry an egg on the street, and I know because I tried it. It's all fair level war, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced, helping veterans and their loved ones, Big C, watching everybody care.
No one should ever pause, Charlton, when it comes to the consideration for our great veterans that have served this country. People don't realize the pandemic that goes on with our veterans. We think about COVID-19, but we lose over 24 veterans a day, Charlton, to suicide in this country. And this can't be acceptable in American society that we turn our backs on those people who have served us so gratefully. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but we need more conserved issues, when it comes to the veterans' needs, financially, mentally, emotionally, physically, Charlton. They suffer in every way. And as well as COVID-19 is the rest of America in isolation. And that brings on depression. And depression has led to too many suicides amongst our veterans. We need to find a way to get more attention directed just to our veterans, Charlton.
I love doing our part. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And definitely you can get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley, home with weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the Home Run King Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, helping to put people back to work, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see our apps pop up all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. There's so much going on when you talk about sports, Big C, and everybody's paying attention to news and politics, I also want to say thank you to and welcome aboard Alexandria, Egypt, founded in 331 BC by Alexander the Great, Big C. And I'm telling you, I really appreciate, they speak Arabic, so maybe the show is translated into Arabic. I don't think you speak Arabic, Big C, but really do appreciate the growth we're having with Big C Sports over in Alexandria, Virginia. It's all fair in love and war. So Big C, man, a lot of good things happening in sports. Over the weekend, I saw Steph Curry and Jason Tatum put on a basketball clinic. It reminded me of the clinic that it had Michael Jordan and Larry Bird. They did a commercial for McDonald's, and they were shooting the ball off the rim and from outside of the building too. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's amazing what CG will always create, Charlton. I mean, when it comes to marketing of a product, companies will go in any direction.
Yeah, they'll go in any direction, but Tatum and Curry, they did their own marketing, Big C. They were shooting the lights out and saw a great contest over there at, it used to be the Boston Garden. I love calling it Boston Garden, but it's TD Garden, and what a great display of basketball acumen. Now they moved the Curry show over in Philadelphia tonight, so that game's already almost concluded, but it's all fair and love and war. I want to touch on some Black History sports, Big C, as we celebrate these accomplishments of these lesser-known African-American athletes that have inspired us over the decades to new heights. Every pro team's Jackie Robinson. September 17, 1956, Big C, Ann Gregory competes on the amateur leg of the Women's U.S. Golf Tour. 7 years before Althea Gibson became the first black golfer on the pro circuit. And when you think about it, Big C, like Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, and many other black men who integrated Major League Baseball, the great Ann Gregory, she dominated her chosen sport during the years that she was limited to segregation in competition, Big C. In 1950, she won 6 of the 7 tournaments she entered, and the United States Golf Association, the UGA Tour, the premier black golf circuit, and was dubbed the quote-unquote the Queen of Negro Women's Golf. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know, the limitations that black people had in the 40s and 50s in America to be able to compete on that mainstream circuit. Even when they were not, Charlton, Miss Gregory demonstrated the dominance of a female black golfer during that era. And I think that's a part of what whites were fearful of, Charlton, is they had to compete and allow these women to get on the same circuit that they were on, that they were never going to be hosting the championship trophies anymore.
Yeah, she did her thing anytime she was given that opportunity. When you think about it, Big C, it was the newspapers that named her the Queen of Negro Women's Golf. But by the time that she finished whooping everybody on the golf course, Big C, she spent a half decade atop the UGA's women's rankings before becoming the first African-American woman to enter a United States Golf Association sponsored event, Big C, even when she tees off in the U.S. Women's Amateur Championship at Meridian Hills Country Club in Indianapolis. Think about this, what she was doing. We just saw the Masters just a couple of weeks ago, Big C. That was $11 million purse. It's all by sponsorship. She was doing a lot of her golf without sponsors, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, where were blacks going to get sponsorship at that time, Charlton? They were never going to be allowed to be on television. You know, this is one of the things that white society has always been fearful of, is that you sit up there and you promote black people, Charlton, and, you know, you're going to say, well, they have equality if we do that. So we cannot let America think that blacks are equal to whites during that era, so we can't be allowed to have them on television.
Yeah, and oftentimes she had to, you know, dig into her own pocket and find whatever change she could to get around. But Gregory had always been athletic and always been very intelligent. She started in amateur tennis tournaments around her home in Gary, Indiana. You know, going back to Gary, Indiana, the great Jackson 5 were from Gary, Indiana, Big C, but only introduced to golf when she married Leroy Percy Gregory. In 1938, he was an avid golfer who devoted so much time to the links, and his new bride considered divorcing him, Big C. But when he left to serve in World War II, she missed him so much that she learned how to play his favorite game. And by the time Leroy Gregory returned in 1945, would you believe she became an accomplished golfer, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is what a lot of men need, Charlton, a great woman by their side. And Miss Gregory proved that she could go out and emulate what her husband had such a passion for, Charlton, to be his partner at all times.
Yep.
And we all need a role model in life to get to levels of accomplishments that we achieve in society, Charlton. But this goes back until the 40s, when Miss Gregory felt that it was so poignant that she wanted to be a part of her husband's life in totality.
As he resolved serving this great country not to even be a part of the GI Bill. If you think about that, Big C, when people talk about how much we love this country, Gregory faced harsh discrimination in the country club culture of golf. She was mistaken for a maid at one USGA event and wasn't even permitted in the clubhouse for a contestant's dinner at another club, Big C, despite the rudeness and all the hate threats, and then she faced a lot of them every day, Big C. Her attitude was always the same, that racism is their problem, not hers. When you think about her golfing career, it ended in 1989 at the age of 76, Big C. No one should complain about not being able to get off the couch. She was doing her thing until 76 years old, defeated a field of 50 women to win the gold medal at the United States National Senior Olympic Games, dominated her competitors by 54 strokes at 76, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is how great black athletes have been over the decades, Charlton, that never got an opportunity to compete. I mean, you think about how good she was as a young woman.
Yeah.
And at 76, she's 44 strokes ahead of an entire field of everybody who's 50 years of age. And she's a senior by 26 years, Charlton. I would have loved, America was robbed of the opportunity to see Miss Gregory play in her prime, as well as so many great black athletes of that era.
Yeah. Anyone that complaining about foot pain and that icy hot that Shaq is selling, whatever he's selling, nothing wrong with that. But at 76 years old, this woman was doing her thing. I don't want to hear anyone complain that they can't get out exercise because their feet hurt too much, and that's their 76 years old and winning a golf tournament by 44 strokes. You see, she competed in 1956 U.S. Women's Amateur Championship, 44. And I mean, everybody loves competition. All you got to do is rise and shine. Growing up, I've always heard my mom say when it's time to get up and go to school, she'd say, "Wake up, baby, it's time to rise and shine." And no matter what you do, you got to rise and shine. And when I think about what that woman did, the greatness of winning by 44 strokes, not retiring until she's 76 years old, and people say, "Hey, Tiger's his golf career is over. He's 45 years old." The lady did it for 76 years old. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the genealogy of the black culture to talk about a superior gene, Charlton, in athleticism and even in knowledge has been well pronounced throughout the world.
Yeah.
And the drawback, Charlton, is not to let blacks compete. And if you don't let them compete, then you understand that they lack superiority at that point.
Yeah.
But once they get on an equal playing field, you see the superiority of the culture.
76 years old and doing her thing, and most of us only heard about the great Jack LaLanne, who was doing his thing until he, I believe, was 95 years old or something like that. But congratulations. I love when people are going out and doing everything they can to just rise and shine. Every single day they got to rise and shine, and she was definitely rising and shining, Big C. Speaking of rising and shining, I want to touch a little bit on the world of baseball. Shane Bieber kept up his record strikeout run. When you think about fanning 13 pitchers, Big C, think about this. 13 pitching the Cleveland Indians past the Cincinnati Reds by the score of 6-3 on Sunday. He became just 2-1 in the season, but became the first pitcher in big league history to begin the season with 4 straight starts with at least 10 strikeouts since the mound was moved back to its current distance back in 1893, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, everybody's out there debating the best team in baseball in power.
Dodgers.
The best player in baseball is Shane Bieber. When you think about this, that he set a major league record that has stood for 150 years, Charlton. 4 consecutive games with 10 strikeouts.
Yeah.
This man has been phenomenal going out there. Yes, you need your other 8 players in the field to play when you're pitching, but he and his catcher right now are best buddies. They're having a field day against everybody.
Yeah, they're having a field day. And he's also pitching with the Laser. I mean, the 2020 American League Cy Young Award winner has 48 strikeouts this year, Big C, matching the great Hall of Famer, the great Nolan Ryan, Big C, for the most of the first 4 starts of his season. Bieber's fanned at least 8 in 16 straight starts, 1 short of the great Randy Johnson's major league mark. When you're talking about those names, you're climbing Mount Rushmore, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's better hope that a pigeon doesn't fly across the mound, because that's what Randy Johnson is so synonymous for. Even with all his great strikeouts he had, Charles, he blew up a bird in Toronto one day where he tried to go across the strike zone and disintegrated into feathers. But, I mean, you have to really like what Bieber's doing. I mean, you could talk about teams, you could talk about players, but to have a pitcher at this juncture of the season, to be as dominant as he has been, it's just phenomenal. And I hope he can continue that pace, Charlton. It's, we don't have pitchers in this era going beyond 6 innings generally. But Bieber has showed that he can ride the tide.
Yeah, he can ride the tide. And Randy Johnson, people were complaining, I can't believe you hit a pigeon. I can't believe you hit a pigeon. He said, everything outside the stadium belongs to that pigeon. Everything on the inside belongs to me. And he was hungry anyway, Big C.
Think about this. Even the PETA or whoever it was filed a suit against Randy Johnson, and they put out an arrest warrant for him in Toronto back in the day.
Yeah, he was just looking for something to eat, man. He believed in going out hunting real food like they did back in the day. It's all fair and love and word, Big C. Major League Baseball, the Yankees don't win. What in the world is wrong with the New York Yankees? The last place New York Yankees off to the worst start in a 15-game start since 1997, Big C. On Sunday, a 3-game sweep that extended the Yankees' losing streak to 5 games. New York fell to an American League worst, 5 wins, 10 losses. It's a poor start for the winningest franchise in baseball since 1997, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think a lot of people in the Big Apple, Charleston, are starting to look at General Manager Brian Cash for some moves that he has made. I mean, everybody wants to talk about the General Manager boom. But Cashman is the individual that put together this lineup. And they are struggling right now. I mean, they we always know the Bronx Bombers as the long ball kings, but they're not doing anything. I mean, when you look at Aaron Judge, he has not gotten off to the start that everybody was expecting. Giancarlo Stanton is not hitting the ball. The pitching has been maligned in the early part of the season. So, I mean, we're only 15, 16 games into the season, Charlton. But the Yankees need to wake up. Maybe they need to go to that Nathan's Hot Dogs eating contest.
They need to do more than hot dogs. But they'll swing the bat again. It's just a matter of time. It's good for them to come back down to earth like the rest of the teams in baseball that don't have, I think, 27 world championships, something of that nature, 25, 27. It's all fair and level war. But something is good in New York, Big C. I'm not talking about the jewelry that some of those guys sell you on New York City street corners that I was dumb enough to buy one time. But Saturday, the great Jacob deGrom was doing his thing, Big C. He just goes out and totally dominates his opponent. It's pretty much every outing, it seems, at this point. So if the Yankee fans are having a hard time watching baseball, go buy a ticket at the Mets games, Big C. This time around, the great Jacob deGrom, he strikes out 9 straight hitters, Big C, tied for the second longest strikeout streak in history, just one shy of the great Tom Seaver's record. And then deGrom's in company with 9 straight strikeouts, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think he might have been watching that ladies' baseball game in the state of Texas over last week, Charlton, when the young lady struck out everybody who walked into the stadium. But, you think about deGrom. I mean, we just got through talking about Bieber and his dominance, leading the league in strikeouts in over 10 in 4 consecutive games. But deGrom going out there striking out 9 consecutive batters. I mean, these are grown men, not middle league players. And he's going up there throwing again. And you have to feel some sort of shame walking up there getting whiffed twice. When
I watch his control, he's not the big, muscular, dominant guy that some pitchers would think he would have to be. Dave Stewart back in the day, he was big, physical, dominant. There's a lot of guys that have been that kind of pitcher, but he's kind of slender, and he just goes out and does his thing. deGrom is the 9th pitcher to strike out at least 9 straight batters in a game. And think about who he joined, Big C. You old-timers understand. 1970, the great Tom Seaver did it 10 times, Big C. In 2020, it was Tyler Alexander. 2015, the great Max Scherzer, Big C. 2012, it was Doug Fister. In 2012, it was Aaron Harang. 2009, the great Ricky Nolasco. In 2007, Jake Peavy. And for you real old-timers, in 1884, Mickey Walsh, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you in that rarefied air, Charlton, that you're going out there and you have complete control of that batter's box, and that's what deGrom has demonstrated. I mean, you think about a pitcher in the past couple of years who has not had support
Yeah.
from his team at the plate, and he has carried the Mets by himself.
Yeah, he really has. I mean, when you think about, I remember, even though it was a closer that I saw, way back in the late, the great Dennis Eckersley. He wasn't big. He wasn't very physical. But, and again, as a closer, the Eck had just a pitch that you couldn't hit. And I know DeGrom's taller, but he seems like he's not throwing as hard as he really is throwing. Who does he remind you of, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when I look at DeGrom, Charlton, I mean, there was a guy named Quisenberry that he reminds me a lot of, but he was more of a submarine pitcher. But when I look at the stature of DeGrom and Quisenberry, who played with the Pirates, I mean, this guy is a hurler.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's not always about the height and stature of a pitcher. I think they had a little pitcher out in San Francisco a few years ago that eludes me. This kid had Lincecum.
Yeah.
Who was about 5'9", 5'10".
Yeah.
And he was a strike genius.
Yeah, he was smoking them, Big C, if that makes sense to you. He was always relaxed. He was always relaxed. And anybody that saw Lincecum pitch over at the AT&T Park back in the day, they were relaxed when they went up and met him, if that makes sense to you, Big C. It's kind of breezy in San Francisco, and whatever he was using to relax, I guess he was relaxing the batters too, because he was hard to hit, Big C. Tonight's Major League Baseball schedule, the White Sox at Boston. Game already underway, Monday, April 19th. St. Louis at Washington, Big C. San Francisco, just thinking of the great Lipscomb at Philadelphia. Tampa Bay at Kansas City. Tampa Bay told the New York Yankees, you're no longer welcome in town, Big C.
Well, the Yanks are just, I mean, they need some spark.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is a team that we're so accustomed to seeing in the postseason. And the baseball season is long.
Yeah.
I mean, so, like you said, you can't win a pennant in the first month of the season. But this is the Yankees team that will find a way to get those backs uncorked, Charlton,
Yep.
and not literally.
Yep.
But, they will find a way to win the game.
Yeah, they'll uncork something, Big C. They always do. You have Texas at Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and the Los Angeles Dodgers taking their act up the road to Seattle. You have Milwaukee at San Diego tonight, and then Minnesota, they're at the Oakland A's. And what a game. Actually, what a series. I know you might say you can't decide things early. And I know people say, well, it's not really a series when you have the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Diego Padres, because the Dodgers, I think, have won 8 of the last 9 or 9 of the last 10. But that game, that series over the weekend, you saw some of the best hitters in baseball. Tatis did his thing, the great Mookie Betts. So many star pitchers and batters. And even though it was not a lot of people in the stadium, Big C, it had a lot of players are saying, manager Roberts was saying, it has that playoff feel to it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, playoff feel to me, Charlton, is the hunt for October.
Yeah.
When you get to that time of the year and the frost is on the field, Charlton, and the ball is a little slick, that's the playoff feel.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these baseball players and these basketball players are always trying to get ready and play, so they don't just have to turn it on and turn it off. When you get to the end of the season or when you get to the playoffs, a lot of people think they can just turn it on. But not everybody can just turn it on. You got to have some chemistry going into it. It's not as if you can just lollygag throughout the rest of the first part of the season, and then get to the end of the season and have a winning team. I just want to go over some of the top teams as they stand for April in the world of Major League Baseball. And everybody has their own opinion. But in my opinion, you got to look no further when it comes to the power rankings for the top teams in Major League Baseball. I'm looking at the Dodgers coming into the game, into this day at 13-3, followed by the Padres. They're 10-7, so maybe the best two teams in baseball. A lot of people feel the Mets are also playing great, 7-4. The Red Sox are at 11-6. The Angels, they're 8-5. You have the Athletics that have been on a winning streak, Big C. They are 9-7 on the season, followed by the Reds at number 7, 9-6. The Brewers are 8-7. The White Sox 8-9. And then you have Cleveland at 8-9. But I would be remiss, Big C, before we come up on the Big C pause, for anybody talking about how good baseball is or how good baseball is not. If you have the chance over the weekend, I saw in Chicago at Wrigley Field, the Atlanta Braves came in, and I thought I saw a football game. I think they had 6 runs before they were out of the top of the first inning. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Atlanta Braves are a hot young ball club, Charlton. They were picked to win the 3rd consecutive National League East title.
They're
led by Ronald Acuna and last year's National League MVP, Freddie Freeman, Charlton, plus a host of others. I mean, this is a team that's deep in the pitching staff, and this is a team that's hoping to get to the World Series this year.
Yeah, they are hoping to get to the World Series, and it's amazing. I know there's one thing about trusting your pitcher, Big C, and I know there's another thing about, well, you don't want to hurt his confidence. But when your starter is down 6-0 before your home team comes at the bat, okay, it's like 1-0, then 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. Then say, at what point in time do you say, well, it's not your day today, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, even as a pitcher, you got to look at the manager and say, hey, give me some help here.
Yeah.
I just don't have it. They see everything that I'm throwing up there and making contact.
Yeah, they see everything that he's throwing up and making contact. But Wrigley Field is a beautiful place for a ball game. Even when it's empty, it just has so much history. And I really did appreciate seeing the Braves come down and be so, I guess they were called inhospitable guests when they put up, I think, 16 runs on the home Chicago Cubs. Made them think like they were the bad Cubs, Big C, but it was a great theater for baseball, and the A's had also a walk-off hit and to win their game against Detroit over the weekend here in Northern California. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about what's going on in the world of NBA basketball. And last I heard, Steph Curry was still raining threes. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. And thank you for Alexandria, Egypt, third largest city in Egypt, following Big C Sports. Really appreciate that. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. You know, funny story. I was in the bank today, and there was a lady, a teller. You know, she looked like she could have been Miss America. She looked kind of like Lauryn Hill, the great musician Lauryn Hill. And so she said, "You can come over here, sir." So I walked up there to make a little transaction, Big C. And we just started talking, and I told her, "I like your braids. How'd you do your braids? How long did it take to do your braids?" She said, "Oh, it took about 3 hours." I said, 3 hours? That's why I shaved my head. She said, "Oh yeah, my husband, he likes when I wear my hair this way." I said, "Oh, where's your wedding ring?" She said, "Oh, I guess I left it at home." I said, "I guess you got a good weekend that you left your wedding ring at home, but your husband noticed your braids." Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, a lot of people have open relationships.
I guess he was open for deposits, if that makes sense to you. It's all fair. He noticed the braids, but not that the ring was missing from the weekend. It's all fair, love, and war. I want to just touch on some NBA basketball. NBA has instructed teams to be vigilant about the impact of a potential verdict that may happen. They're expecting sometime by the end of this month, Big C, in April, the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, including the possibility of game postponements. And they're just telling what I'm really proud of the NBA for. They're telling these young men, we know that you have a life outside of the basketball court. We know that you have a life outside of wearing a uniform. And we don't expect you to be intellectually vapid. Those days are over. And for people that think, well, they should just shut up and dribble, those days are over too. And I'm proud that the NBA is not putting their head in the sand, because that's what allowed so many negative things to happen over the past 100+ years when Jim Crow, Big C. People put their head in the sand and said, mind your business, you just play sports and don't worry about what's happening out here. And I'm glad the NBA is showing some consciousness, because they want to be a part of a solution, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to understand, during the days of Jim Crow, blacks did not have voice at all, Charlton. Now that black athletes are so prominent in America and have a very vocal voice that everybody listens to, and it resonates across the sports spectrum, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, Charlton. Every sport is paying attention to what's going on today in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Charlton, where the jury was given a chance to start deliberations in the Chauvin murder case. And it's going to resonate throughout America. This is something that America is paying attention to, Charlton. Either this man committed a crime or police can kill black people with impunity, and that will be the history of America from this day forward, depending on the verdict.
You know, I was just thanking the great people from Alexandria, Egypt, Big C, and for our shows growing in Alexandria, Egypt, and I don't speak Arabic, but they translate the show. And from where there's Alexandria, Egypt, where there is, you know, London, England, Paris, France, Sydney, Australia, Beijing, China, Big C, everybody around the world is under a litmus test right now. And the test is, do you believe what your eyes see, or you believe a snake oil salesman that can tell you that what you see is not what you see? Focus on what I'm telling you. Don't focus on what you see. And it's just like the lady at the bank. Her husband, not that he loves her braids, but he forgot to acknowledge that she doesn't have her wedding ring for whatever reason. And I think for every culture of person, both genders, all genders, whatever people happen to relate to, young and old, they're going to see the system of the eyeball test. And can you really tell people that what they see is not what they saw, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that's the bottom line, what this is. You know, I'm old enough to remember Rodney King having the crap beat out of his butt in Los Angeles back in the early 90s, Charlton, and the jury saying, well, if he had just complied with the police, maybe they wouldn't have beat him for 12 minutes. And all he was doing was laying on the ground being tased, and every time he got tased, his body went into convulsions. Every time he hit, his body went into reaction, Charlton. The same thing with Derek Chauvin. They're saying that, you know, that George Floyd's heart was too big. He had a heart condition. The only problem with the heart was just Derek Chauvin lacked heart on that day, Charlton. He lacked human compassion. He wouldn't have killed a dog in the way that he killed George Floyd. That's what people have to remember. That white man would not have knelt on a dog's neck for 9.5 minutes and suffocated him, but he did it to a black man, which he dehumanized.
Yeah, I remember, if my math is not wrong, there was a famous athlete that got convicted because there was dogfighting on his property. And allegedly, he wasn't part of it, but they were using his property for it. I don't know the whole story. It happened down south. And whether people think that's right or wrong, it's actually a tradition. People do cockfighting with roosters, Big C, and they do dogfighting. And people say, well, that's not right to do that. But people go out to hunt animals. People go fishing. When you catch a fish, the life is over for that fish. I'm not trying to justify anything. I'm just saying that there's a gaming society, and they go out and hunt. I got on an airplane not long ago, and I went up to Montana, and there was a lot of these hunters that had their rifles on the plane, on the top. I was like, what in the world are these? They were rifles. They had a lot of them in the plane, whatever it was. So this gaming is also an industry that people are in. But a guy went to prison because there was dogfighting on his property, Big C. And I could imagine, I don't know what the outcome of this trial is going to be, but if you can get convicted for owning the property where there's dogfighting, but all around the world, people see a man sworn to protect and serve the public with his knee on a man, killing a man in broad daylight for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And I know the attorney has to do his job, which is tell you didn't see what you really saw. But you just think about that when a man spent time in prison for dogfighting on his property, and you have the defense attorney saying that what you saw you didn't see for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's always been a theory that police have to make split-second decisions, Charlton, as we saw in Orlando Cortez, young man, 13 years old in Chicago, who was shot by a police officer when he said, show me your hands. He showed him his hands. He shot him anyway. Regardless, he was going to shoot him. That's what was in his mind. Derek Chauvin had 9 minutes and 29 seconds to make a decision, not a split second, not a 1 second. He had 9 minutes and 29 seconds He had 3.5 minutes, Charlton, after George Floyd stopped breathing and no longer had a pulse, to render aid to him. He chose not to. He wanted to assure that George Floyd was dead, because the person that generally writes the report is the one that's alive. Derek Chauvin was alive. The thing that he miscalculated, Charlton, were so many witnesses and so many cameras videotaping the event.
Yeah, it's something that the whole world is watching, and I know the dirt will come out in the wash. We don't know what the verdict is going to be. People can assume, but when you assume, sometimes you can be wrong, and I hope that justice is ferreted out. And for anyone that thinks that you can put your knee on someone's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds and be found not guilty, have someone put a knee on your neck for 9 minutes, 29 seconds. If you think that was innocent of what he did, it's all going to come out in the wash. I want to touch on something before I touch on basketball, Big C. You know, I'm so proud of the NBA making that statement. Now, juxtapose that with the NBA saying, Big C, about, you know, thank you guys for being involved in what's going on in your communities outside of just what happens on the basketball court. If I go back to the Masters, that was won by a Japanese citizen, I believe for the first time on the male side, Big C, and the way they paid homage to, I guess, the equality is they brought out Lee Elder, who is up in age and fragile, Big C. He even had a breathing apparatus. And I thought they embarrassed the man intentionally. They had him standing next to Jack without a breathing apparatus. And the whole world can see, all throughout history, one man was white, that was Jack. And one man was black, that was Lee Elder. They both have 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 heart, and 1 brain. But all throughout life, Jack has been given favoritism by society, by mainstream society. His kids don't love him any more than Lee Elder's family, Big C. And I know Lee Elder did what he could to just say thank you, but it still hurt for me to see that, because they tried to, in my opinion, embarrass a man as opposed to have him come out when he was more spry and healthy. Golf says nothing about anything that's happening in Georgia, where they're trying to change the voting, the way people vote. And so NBA compared to golf, it's an African-American dominated sport compared to golf. But even golf, the guys who benefit from golf, they got to realize and look in the mirror and say, we've done nothing to make society better, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, your buddy Jim Nash, I believe, broadcast the Masters, and I think he's the same buffoon that said he was so tired of that kneeling crap on a live mic at a football game.
That's right. He sure did. Hello, friends. Now, not everybody's your friend that says they're your friend. In politics, sometimes it seems like Republicans are starting a white supremacist caucus. Obviously, 2021 is hard to just come out and say whites only. Please, the one group the GOP lawmakers has extremely come close to that, Big C, championing a common respect for uniquely Anglo-Saxon political traditions, Big C, that are Anglo-Saxon traditions. For starters, they are apparently involved demonizing immigrants. And to me, it's a lot like what happened with Lee Elder, Big C. They bring out a black man that they discriminated against all of his life, and we know stress causes people to have sickness and illness, Big C. So not only did they wait till he was sickly and ill with a breathing apparatus to bring him out there and say, hey, look, you know, here's the great Lee Elder. We're going to just pay homage to him when he doesn't look like the guy that was dominating on the golf courses. And sometimes, and I think that's political, Big C, yet they said nothing about us stopping the vote for people who look like Lee Elder. And then you have the same thing going on with some of our politicians, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as we look at our Republican politicians, Charlton, calling for an Anglo-only party, this is what they're calling for. So all you black people and Hispanic and Asian people who have voted Republican, they're saying that they don't want you in the party other than just your vote to help them achieve superiority.
Yeah.
But you think about being that brazen and racist in American society today, Charlton, to say that only Anglo life matters in politics, and they want to create a totally Anglo party to rule over the rest of America's diversity.
Well, that's what the insurrection was about, Big C. People don't have to read between the lines. It was true. It was about that. They didn't comply when law enforcement said comply, and there was a lot of people inside that were directing that. One was orange color hair, and the others were listening to him. There's a lot of stuff going on. The Confederacy lost the Civil War, but they didn't move out of the country, if that makes sense to you. I want to touch on some world of sports. Because sometimes you gotta, sports is created to take our minds off of real things. But sports is also real. And I love the industry. But in that industry, just like the NBA said, not that we seek their validation, but the NBA said what we've been saying for 6 years now. Unless you're just a dumb person, don't pat people on the back for being ignorant. And Big C, sometimes I even disagree with you when I'm going to say this, because I'll say, for many years, our sports brethren, they will see all these things going on, and they will shut up and dribble. And you'll say, well, they're the people who run these sports companies, they tell them, look, just read this script or you're going to be fired. Well, I have a call to the sports directors. The NBA just played chess with you, and they crowned you. You want to crown them? Crown them. The NBA just said, don't be dumb. It's okay to talk about things that affect all of us, no matter what color you are, no matter where you are in the world. And Big C, I'm proud of that happening. I just wish it would happen in more sports, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to think about these sports broadcasters, Charlton. They speak in the third person. They're an employee just like any employee for any corporation in America. There are rules and bylaws of your corporation to maintain your employment. These people are thinking about feeding their families. They cannot go out and restructure American society. We call on sports brethren to do that. Where are our damn politicians who we elect to do that? And they choose not to do that, and yet we do not remove them from office. And they have a bigger voice than these sports authorities. Leagues and players can come out and make this stand. And these reporters report on what the leagues and players do.
Yeah.
So they do it in the third person and not directly to protect themselves.
Yeah. It's all fair and love and war, but it's for the sports producers. Open your eyes. You don't have to be brave. Just a few good men and women. And if you're afraid, just follow what the NBA just did. It's better for all of life, for everybody, and that's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it, and I appreciate the NBA. Speaking of NBA, Golden State Warriors star guard, the best three-point shooter in the history of the universe, my opinion, Steph Curry, dropped 47 points on Saturday night, becoming the first player since Los Angeles Lakers legend, the great Kobe Bryant, scored at least 30 points in 10 straight games at age 33, Big C, or older. Curry in his 12th NBA season acknowledged this as one of the best stretches that he's ever been on during his storied career. I think a part of that's because he's more muscular, Big C. He can take the bumps and the bruises that they were trying to give to him. They were kind of knock him off stride at times. He can kind of fight through it now. Statistically, it is for sure that Curry said after the Warriors lost 119-114 at Boston Celtics, and that Boston officiating, that at the end of the first half, and I'm not complaining, Big C, at the end of the first half, they went on such a run because there was no calls on playing football against Golden State, and then Boston was given every benefit of the doubt, the whole scratch and kick. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at what Steph Curry is doing, I think the year he took off last year helped him out a lot, Charlton.
With the
and
wrist.
It saved his legs quite a bit, and he gave him a little more endurance for this season. But he knows that all the pressure of his team's success lies on his shoulders. And when he gets an open look, he's going to fire away.
Yeah, he's going to fire away. And I know people can talk about, well, maybe it's luck. It's not luck. The guy just earned it. He's been doing it since he was at Davidson, Big C. When he played at Davidson, he was pretty much the only star player on that team when they got into March Madness. And now with the Golden State, with the Splash Brother being out, there's no, Draymond Green can do his thing defensively and is a great assist, but he's not a three-point shooting threat. He may knock down 2 a game. And there's no Andre Iguodala, Big C, playing great defense like back in the day. They don't have Durant doing his thing. There's no Klay Thompson, his Splash Brother, Big C. So when you think about this Golden State team, they have guys coming off the bench that are starters now. So Curry has to do this, but he shouldn't have to. You have a multi-billionaire owner in Lake up in the Bay Area. They could find somebody to help this man out so he doesn't shoot out all of his power, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, Charlton, there's a thing called a salary cap. It doesn't make any difference how deep your pocket is that you can only put certain amount of income on your roster. You got Kelly Oubre, you got Wiggins. Both of these guys are 20-point scorers at a point in their career. And so it's a matter of them stepping up each night.
Yeah.
The Warriors have been injury plague over the past couple of years.
Yep.
But regardless
That's
of who
true.
your franchise is, you can only put certain players on your roster. They have to fit within your salary cap.
Yeah, you got to do that. And also the great Jason Tatum, he dropped 44 points. He was right on Curry's tail throughout the whole game. In fact, had 1 point more in the first half. And he's becoming a dominant player. I think he always has been a dominant player for the Boston Celtics. But the great Jason Tatum, Big C, he's learning to do what Michael Jordan did. He's more athletic this year than I've ever seen him, even though he's a young man. These guys that are lifting weights, they realize it buys them more ability to take a punishment and bounce away and still get the basket. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what it is that Jason Tatum is maturing. You got to realize he only spent 1 year at Duke. So when he came out as a 19-year-old in the NBA, he still had to grow into his body.
Yeah.
And now 3 or 4 years later, Charlton, he's an all-star caliber player with MVP consideration.
Yeah.
The older you get, the more mature and stronger you get in the NBA, and that has aided him out, Charlton, with that muscle maturity.
Yeah, he started to do his thing, too. Really love watching that shooting exhibition with Curry and Tatum. They combined for 91 points. That's amazing when you think about shooters, Big C. Also, New York. It's nice to have New York relevant in the NBA, Big C. The New York Knicks almost blew a 15-point lead on Sunday against the New Orleans Pelicans. But thanks to some late-game heroics and the great Reggie Bullock, Big C, another strong performance by the great, why did the Lakers let him go Julius Randle, Big C? They came away with a 122-112 win in overtime. Bullock had a three-pointer with about 2 seconds left that sent the game into overtime. And I know the coach was chewing out the players, Big C, about missing the assignment. But the Knicks doing their thing, Big C. Randle was a star of the show. I mean, he was a star of the show when they beat the Lakers, when the Lakers came to town. And now he's been all season long for the Knicks. He finished with 33 points, 10 assists, 5 rebounds, 5 steals. In the process, he recorded his 4th straight game with at least 30 points, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think it's the Pelicans sitting around wondering why they let Julius Randle go. That's the last team that he was with. But when they acquired Zion, they figured that they had no space for him. He's been the lightning rod, Charlton, to catapult the Knicks into the 6th place in the Eastern Division and going to make the playoffs for the first time in over a decade. I mean, it's been inspiring basketball that we've seen at the Garden. Thibodeau will be Coach of the Year in the NBA with this job that he's done with this young roster in New York, Charlton. And think about it. They're going to be a bright light beaconing in New York for years to come.
They really will, Big C. And even with all the nouveau riche uniforms, I really like the new look that the New York Knicks have when they wear their all black, whether like the New York Knicks kind of in a circle like a basketball around the front of the jersey. It's all fair and level war. Also, when you think about what he was doing in that game, Big C, that he was the first Knick player to accomplish that feat since the great Carmelo Anthony back in 2014 out of Syracuse, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, New York, I mean, has had a host of great ball players. They never surrounded Carmelo Anthony with enough attributes on that team to help him get deep into the playoffs. But I think with this young team that Thibodeau has put together there in New York, even with Dolan's interference, Charlton, the fans in New York are going to have a lot to cheer about in the postseason.
Yeah, it's something else when they get fans that can get back into Madison Square Garden and seeing a good team that can compete for a playoff spot. Not saying they're going to win the Eastern Conference Championship, but they're more on the floor every night than the Brooklyn Nets that has an all-star lineup, but nobody can stay healthy. And I do like what the New York Knicks are able to do. It's just a matter of time before they make New York proud again. Tonight's Monday, April 19th, NBA schedule, Cleveland at Detroit, Big C. Most all these games are already underway. Cleveland at Detroit, Chicago at Boston, Golden State at Philadelphia, Big C. San Antonio, they're at Indianapolis, actually Indiana. Houston's at Miami. Miami had a big game win last night over the Brooklyn Nets, Big C. You have OKC at Washington, Phoenix at Milwaukee, Memphis at Denver, and then Utah tonight at the LA Lakers. Big C, going back to the game, Brooklyn against Miami. Bam Adebayo is like the only guy in the universe that can affect the arc of Kyrie Irving's shot, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, they're going to be competitors down the road as you get into the playoffs. I mean, we're less than 20 games left in the NBA season, and Brooklyn is a team that cannot stay healthy.
Yeah.
And in the playoffs, you're going to play a good team every week.
Yeah.
And every game, not having those weak sisters on the schedule. So this could be a troubling spot for New Jersey because they can't stay healthy. Kevin Durant is out of the lineup again for a few weeks.
Yeah, he needs to lift some more weights, Big C. It's all fair level war. NBA authentic, confident, unapologetic, Swim Cash is opening the door for women behind her, Big C. Former WNBA champion and current New Orleans Pelicans executive has an honest conversation about being an African-American woman in sports. You know, we talked about so many great athletes over the years on the athletic field. But this is another it's another door that's opening in the universe, Big C. You can see farther when the doors open. The New Orleans Pelicans offered Swin Cash the opportunity to join her front office. Is she currently sure that she accepted it? The former WNBA All-Star Olympian felt comfortable working as the director of franchise development for the New York Liberty, Big C, as well as a studio analyst for MSG New York, and her family was settled. Ultimately, she decided to do it for the women behind her, who all dream of working in front offices and not just as athletes, Big C, for major professional sports teams that are typically dominated by men. I'm really proud of her, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, women have always sought opportunity, Charlton, especially African-American women. We've seen the intelligence of African-American women over the decades. When you think about African-Americans who were responsible for man orbiting the Earth here, Charlton, on those Apollo flights, the Mercury flights, when they were first launched by the United States in the early 60s, Charlton. And we think about how black women have catapulted American society behind the scenes, never been given the opportunity to take the spotlight and to be out there speaking in droves. And here's Swin Cash, Charlton, who is running the New Orleans Pelicans NBA franchise and opening up opportunities for other women of color. All they need is that interview opportunity.
Just a chance. Just the chance, the opportunity to shine, and people can shine. She said she was going to take the position and make sure the door stays open for other people. And it's a revolving door. It should be a revolving door for many people. Too many times people think about women and they get a position and they can only be one, Big C. Women should have the same opportunity as men have. And as for Cash, once she made it to New Orleans, kept her word to make sure that the revolving door continued to turn for women behind her. Teresa Witherspoon, a former WNBA player, Naismith Hall of Famer, joined the team shortly after Cash as a two-way player development coach and was promoted to a full-time assistant coach a little more than a year later, Big C. And that's good progress, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when we look at the president of the NBA, Charlton, and the men that are accepted of the women's role being involved, I mean, most of these basketball players have a big or a little sister. They all have a mother. And they understand the guidance and the tutelage of a black woman that can lead them. They're not going to lead them astray, Charlton. And when you think about not having a false agenda as a black woman running a professional sports organization, is that you have to work 2 or 3 times as harder as your white counterparts to achieve success. Regardless of how good your team is, everyone will always try to scrutinize you and nitpick at every little thing that's there that you may have missed on.
Women have been trying to do their thing. They just need the opportunity. Wish everybody nothing but the best. No matter what you do, just keep rising and keep shining no matter how you feel. Always rise and shine. NCAA gymnastics, Big C. It all came down to the final gymnasts with Michigan and Oklahoma tied and a national title on the line. All eyes were in Dickies Arena were on the Wolverines' Abby Hisco, Big C. She mounted the balance beam for the final routine of the day. In the end, her score came out 9.9250, was good enough to secure Michigan its first NCAA Women's Gymnastics Championship in program history on Saturday in Fort Worth, Texas. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, big praise for the ladies of maize and blue up there at that Wolverine State. Hopefully Jim Harbaugh was there and he can take the inspiration to take back to his football team. But to be the first to ever win a national title for University, Charlton, what chaos for those young women of Michigan, Charlton. And congratulations to that program.
Hey, you know what? Last I checked, they have opening positions for men, and women on the football team. Wouldn't be the first time that a woman could do her thing. Also, I want to just say congratulations to Michigan for winning that title, gymnastics title. Down in Alabama, Big C, they have the Alabama Crimson Tide spring football game, and I think it had 40+ thousand people, and I believe it's the largest crowd anywhere in the United States since COVID-19 shut down most of sports. And then there's a guy by the name of Bryce McGill was the MVP. the quarterback for Alabama out of Mater Dei Santa Ana. And so when you think about it, I know people talk about COVID. We still got to stay safe and social distance. I'm not really for all of the theatrics. But no, it's not the largest crowd. I think the Texas Rangers have the largest crowd since COVID shut down. But Alabama, for the college programs, that's the first large crowd for a spring game for college football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's in spring games all through the South, Charlton. Everybody has a crowd basically that size.
Yeah. Well, it's all fair and love and war. And Bryce McGill was doing this. Actually, his name is Bryce Young. He led Mater Dei of California, Santa Ana, Southern California, to a national championship. They won 2 of the last 3 high school national championships prior to COVID showing up. And I wish him nothing but the best down there in Alabama. And word has it, when Bryce Young came back to California, his parents were asking him, "What are you doing with all of those paper bags? We sent you with luggage, Big C." Your thoughts?
Well, it shows the promise of going out of California, Charlton, going to a winning program.
Yeah, his parents want to know, what are you doing with all those paper bags coming back home? Don't you have luggage? It's all fair. I love it, war. Big C, I'm telling you, I just opened the show by thanking our friends in Alexandria, Egypt, for following Big C Sports is growing in Alexandria, Egypt. And when you think about it, things come to an end. Longtime quarterback Alex Smith announced his NFL retirement Monday, today, capping his 16-year journey that started at Helix High School of La Mesa, California, near San Diego. He was on the same football team with Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush went to USC, ended up winning a Heisman.
Family got a free house.
hey, maybe the house was made of paper bags. They huffed and puffed and it didn't come down.
Well, it was made from wood.
Oh, fair and love it, war. The great Alex Smith decided to go to Utah, Big C. And then his story in the NFL led the 49ers to a playoff and ultimately got replaced by Colin Kaepernick, Big C, and then went over to Kansas City, led them to the playoffs, got replaced by touchdown Patrick Mahomes, and then, wouldn't you believe, he went to the Washington football team, and they were in the playoffs this year. So now he hangs it up, and I'm happy that he's going to focus on his health, Big C. He was a number 1 pick in the NFL draft and ended after his improbable return from a gruesome injury. He'll turn 37 years old next month. Announced his decision, saying that he wants to spend more time with his family, and he's released by the Washington football team last month, but it was the NFL's Comeback Player of the Year, Big C, in 2020 for getting back on the field after an injury 2 years earlier that nearly cost him his leg, and a lot of people wouldn't come back from that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, this was the most memorable comeback in NFL history. And every former player and current player had some fear for Alex Smith when he returned to the playing field against the Los Angeles Rams this season, Charlton. I mean, because all you can think about, is he going to get hurt?
Yeah.
Is this going to, eliminate his leg, Charlton? Is somebody going to hit him and he can't withstand that structural damage again?
Yeah.
But, he was such an inspiration for so many people. When you think about the adversity that he fought through in his career, he had a winning season going in San Francisco.
Yep.
Yet he was replaced at quarterback. He had a playoff team in Kansas City, won 11 regular season games. Yet he was replaced at quarterback. He had his team atop of the NFC East, Charlton.
Yeah, that's right.
When he suffered that horrific leg injury with the Washington Redskins at that time. And he came back this year, Charlton, and got the Washington football team into the playoffs. So he never made it to a Super Bowl as a starter, Charlton. But when you think about what Alex Smith did, everybody will always remember the draft when he and Aaron Rodgers were sitting in the green room waiting to see who would go first in the first round, Charlton, of those 2 quarterbacks. But all you have to do is look back at Alex Smith and smile because of what he went through with that horrific leg injury, Charlton, some 17 surgeries that could have cost him his leg or even cost him his life.
Yeah.
But to have the determination to come back. People don't understand the fortitude that athletes have. Alex Smith represents everything that's good and determined about professional sports, John.
Yeah, I really like his attitude, and, people may not notice it much, but he's mentored great quarterbacks that went on to go to Super Bowls, Big C, and I just appreciate what he's done from high school to college and wish him nothing but the best with himself and his family. I want to go around the world before we close today, Big C, and really, again, thank you to Alexandria, Egypt, for following Big C Sports. Big C, world football, European soccer was rocked by the biggest story in at least a generation when 12 of Europe's biggest clubs announced plans to break away from the established soccer order and form a super league, if that makes sense to you, Big C. The development came as a potential remake of the European soccer landscape dramatically, and there's still much that isn't known about what's ahead. And so the basis, when you think about it, from what I've learned about it, there's a group of 12 clubs, Big C, from across Europe's bigger leagues. They announced plans to form a competition called the Super League, Big C. The league shouldn't be established. It would offer permanent spots for some of the world's biggest clubs and play matches midweek while allowing the involved clubs to remain in their domestic competitions. Now, the plan is currently opposed by FIFA and the UEFA, the governing bodies of the International European Soccer, respectively. But I tell you, it's a sea change. I know there's some lawsuits happening about it, but when you think about the financial backing, Big C, the estimated earnings would be fixtures signing up the proposed Super League of at least $425 million. Each of the would-be permanent members of the proposed Super League are being promised about 350 million euros, about $425 million to sign up. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, is the first to file a lawsuit against it because the Premier League is the number one league in England, Charlton,
yeah.
And so they don't want to lose that. But if you think about what you just said, this is what I've been talking about with the NBA and the NFL, that they have financial power,
yeah.
where the players, if they want, can separate and go out and form their own league. They have that much clout. You think about this league in England is going to be backed by J.P. Morgan Chase,
yeah.
largest bank in the world, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're willing to put their money behind it because they know of the star power of the players and what they can generate financially by owning the television rights to this league, what they're going to get back in return, Charlton, because we think about the NFL being big in the United States. You have to see what World League Soccer is over in England.
It's huge.
The NFL is peril compared to the soccer leagues over there. This is a lifestyle. And so for these 12 teams to get together and also have a rotating 5 teams that would come in, Charlton, that they would bring in, you're talking about a power structure in the sport that we've never seen before.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know what, Big C? The athletes in some of these teams, they recognize their own power. And by recognizing their own power, they realize the leverage that they have. And so when people sometimes in the United States, a lot of our African-American brethren that dominate the league, the NBA, and even, you could say, most of NFL football, when people complain about not having the chance to get a head coaching job or even an interview, what can they learn from people across the pond, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, this is what I've been talking about, Charlton, is that you have the power to have your own financial destiny in your hand.
Yeah.
And if you choose to do that, you can exercise that. No one's going to say you can't do it. They're going to oppose you doing it, but they cannot stop you from doing it. And when you have the prime minister of a country suing a league, Charlton, for forming, that lets you know the power of the athlete.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing in Europe. And I've been preaching for the black athletes in America to do this, Charlton, for the past year.
Yeah.
And I wish that they would pay attention because we have financial investments from black athletes in some of these European soccer teams, Charlton.
Yeah.
And they need to take a hold to that and look at what's going on across the pond and think about implementing that here in the United States because we've seen fledgling leagues try to start up without star power. Now, you can start your own league because you are the stars.
Yeah.
Everybody will follow.
Yeah, everybody will follow. Either lead, follow, or get out of the way. It's all fair and level war. I wish them nothing but the best. So I guess sports and politics do mix, Big C. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble, with all you've got to use. How can you lose, Big C? What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as we sit here today, the Summer Olympics is less than 100 days away. And Japanese officials are struggling with the prospect of canceling the Olympics once again due to COVID-19 breakout in Japan. It's at an epidemic rate right now, Charlton, with the new rise of a COVID strain over there. So they're considering not bringing all the world's great athletes into this hodgepodge of COVID-19, Charlton, and there's a potential that we will not see the Summer Olympics again here in 2021. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers our nurses, doctors, and first responders. Fortunately enough, they're available every day, Charlton, for patients that need to see.
They're available every day. They rise and shine every day. You can rise and shine every day, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, my mom always says it's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.